Hey, Krisserin.
Hey, Kelton.
How are you? It looks like the sun is shining in beautiful California.
So I'm loath to say this to you, considering you live in Colorado, but it is fucking cold. It is four, and when I say cold, I mean I was just outside and it was, I think, 44 degrees, and I was freezing.
That
I
is cold. Well, you also don't have the wardrobe. This is a key factor. Most of my wardrobe is wool.
what's the saying? There's no bad weather, just bad clothing, right?
Yeah, that is a Norwegian saying in origin, and they have it down to a science. They have
I've traveled.
down to a science.
Okay.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels
From first drafts to query letters
through inevitable rejection
and hopefully eventual success
from California
to Colorado. This is Pen Pals.
You've been locked in a cabin with two men for too long, Kelton.
I was live editing what I was saying, okay? I was like, there's an opportunity for a cute little pun here, and we're going to stick it in there.
I love it. I love it. Well, tell me, we had some goals that we talked about last week. How did you do?
I did mediocre.
Remind ourselves, because you had if I'm remembering correctly, a pathetic goal, a medium goal, and then a reach goal. So
This is accurate. My pathetic goal was the one I got. My pathetic goal was 300. My interim goal was 2,000, and my big reach was 5,000. But I got 500, 497 to be exact. And I did other stuff that I had to do. I am taking a class that starts on Sunday.
Right.
It is a plot class with Lee Stein, who is a novelist, works in publishing, and has a Substack called Attention Economy, where she talks a lot about the publishing industry. And she is leading this plot course, and I had homework for it, part of which was watching the entire second season of Fleabag.
I
And
mean, what a trial.
so
A
trial
hot
for me.
priest? Are you kidding me?
Hot Priest was as good, or if not better, than I remembered. And then I also had to read the first 3 chapters of Anatomy of a Story and do a little character development for the novel. So I did extra work on it, but did not hit the supreme word goal. I just hit the baby, the pathetic one. And I felt good in my patheticness.
I hate that you call it that, but I'm happy that you're happy. You want the disappointed dad, and I'm just going to gentle parent you to death.
I know. I'm like, be mad at me.
Oh, man.
And how was your goal?
My goal was to try and sit down and write for 2 hours every day. And I have come to realize that is actually very difficult to do. 1 hour is very, for me, achievable because I think like around the 40-minute mark is when my brain starts to get distracted and I feel like I need a break and I need to get up and get a cup of tea or pet the dog, whatever it may be, and then go back into a second round. Sometimes it's hard to get back on track after that first 40 minutes. But I pretty much did write for at least an hour every day, sometimes more than 2 hours. So I feel like setting aside at least an hour every single day to produce work is a good, regular, achievable goal for me. I would love to do more if I can. So I think between 1 and 2. And that's why I'm wondering if time spent is a good goal for you, Kelton, because it seems like you're, well, no, only, only because you're doing a lot of work on your book that is not generative, right? It is research, outlining, and things that aren't leading up to your word count goal, but are work that should not be discounted and should be credited because it is an achievement that you were able to do those things.
Yeah, but it's also something I've done for the last 10 years without producing the novel. I
Okay, fair
do
enough.
so much background work,
Mhm.
and that is what I am trying to get away from is the weeds. I am trying to stand up in the field of my novel and just build some structures and worry about the weeds later. So, but I do hear you on blocking out time to do the writing. I did want to ask if your hour or 2 hours a day were always at the same time, or if you do you put them on the calendar Do you tell your husband, don't talk to me in this hour? How are you taking that time?
I mean, I generally tell my husband not to talk to me. I'm just kidding. Just leave me alone, please. Because I set it as a goal, I did put 2-hour blocks on my calendar, and I was able to map out 2 hours Monday through Thursday. And Friday's a little bit more wily for me, but then on the weekends, I just made it a priority to sit down and do the work for as long as I possibly could. Those are the days when I was able to actually work for longer than 2 hours. To answer your question, I prefer to write in the afternoon. There's something about the morning for me because I'm getting up, I'm taking the kids to school. I've been in the car. The world has imprinted upon me already. And I feel like once I've gotten through the day, picked the kids up from school, gotten back, had a very strong espresso, I can put everything away and just focus on writing. But that being said, I wrote the first draft of this novel in 2012.
Wow.
And I did that in the morning. I did it very early in the morning. I woke up at 5 a.m. and wrote it for a couple of hours. And I want to try doing that this next week. I want to try getting up early, which is very difficult for me because I am a night owl and I like to stay up late and read, and I like to sleep in when I can, but I'm going to try and do that this week. I got this guideline from Amy Bender. This was how she would write every morning. The first 2 hours of the morning, she would get up when her brain was fresh and nothing has entered her mind that could pollute her mind besides the work that she was doing.
I love it. Let's get into what we're talking about this week. We are talking about editing and workshopping. I have not done a lot of workshopping, and I don't do a lot of editing. We have a lot to talk about my bad habits this week, but I want to start with talking about what workshopping means and your experience with workshopping. Not everybody takes that approach with their writing. Not everybody's had the opportunity to be workshopped. So tell me like I don't know anything, which, as you can tell, I don't.
I think that it's really important. When I first started seriously working on story and novel writing, I made the mistake of giving my book to people who I should have never asked to read it.
A complete manuscript.
Sections of a manuscript, definitely complete manuscript. And these are people that I met who I had worked with, who I knew were writers or were themselves working on books. And I think that when you are in a workshop, a formal workshop, there are parameters that should, if the workshop leader is a good one, I've had good and bad workshop leaders, create a safe space for sharing work and feedback and critique. Now, when I first started out, I gave my book to people who I thought were going to give me good, helpful feedback and critiques and criticisms, and they just ripped me apart, ripped my book apart. And to be fair, the book that I had them read is now in a drawer and will be burned upon my death. But I think that the job that we have as writers, as a community of writers, is yes, always to give helpful, encouraging feedback, but ultimately to encourage people to keep going, because it is so hard to write, period, full stop. It is so difficult to write a book. You do put a lot of your soul and your personality and your history and all of these things that make you who you are into your writing. And when you give that bit of vulnerability to somebody else who is not working in your best interest, who doesn't know how to give helpful feedback, you can really get into a situation where you are so discouraged and so disheartened. And if you keep writing and you send your book out, you're going to get rejections and all of these people who are telling you to stop and don't, and you're not good enough, or you'll tell yourself those things. So you have to be very careful about who you give your book to. Do not give it to your friend that you think is in your best interest, because you don't know what they're bringing to it. And unless they are a seasoned reader and writer and know how to give feedback, it can be dangerous for you. So I think that is the thing that I always caution people, because I made that mistake, and it was only through my internal fuck you nature that I was like, I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to keep going because it was important to me, right? But you don't want to get stopped before you start. That's my first bit of advice. And then Yeah, I've done a lot of workshopping. And the way that it typically will work is that you have a writing sample of determined length, whether it is 5 to 8 to 10 to 20 pages that you will submit. Depending on who's leading the workshop, it might have directed feedback, like this is the type of thing that we're looking for, that we want to give feedback on. Or you could say, these are the things I'm struggling with, or you just give it and then get feedback back. And then what you typically will get is a line edit and that's not fix my grammar. That's this word is a little awkward, or I'm unclear about what you're trying to say here, or, ooh, I really like this sentence. And whenever I do line edits, I try and outline the things that I love and the things that I'm struggling with. And then you'll get actual paragraphs of notes on things that you thought worked or didn't. And the things I
Mhm.
love, and here are the things that I think that you could improve upon. Say everything I write is great, like my mom does. Like, this is fantastic. You're so smart. You're so brilliant. You're such a great writer. And I'm like, yes, mom, tell me all the things.
She's looking through the lens of love.
Yes. You need that constructive paragraph because you want to believe that this person wants you to succeed and wants to help you. And that should be the environment of a workshop. That's a good workshop. I can tell you, I can go in length about what bad workshops look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have an idea. When I took screenwriting at UCLA, my professor was really useful. He would pull me aside after class and be like, what do you want to work on in this piece? And I can give you specific feedback on that. He's like, because this is the beginning of your first screenplay. There's a lot of stuff you don't know, but what is the part that you really want help figuring out? And I always appreciated that approach. And that is often what I'll take to the people I trust to read my writing in the rare times I do want someone to look at it first. I will be like, I don't care what you think about these three things, but I want you to read this with the lens of the fourth thing, which I am troubled by. And inevitably, a lot of those people will be like, I do kind of want to say something about number 2 on your list. And oftentimes I'll just be like, yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's as much workshopping as I've been doing lately. Have you been doing any workshopping on the novel you're currently working on?
This current novel is something that I did workshop parts of it in the past, like a decade ago. This new work that I'm producing is very new, and I probably won't put it in front of anyone until the second draft is done. I don't think that you want anyone reading a spaghetti draft, which is your like zero draft. I don't think even the first draft is a good thing to have someone read unless you really feel like you're lost and you're like, I don't know if this character is more interesting than that storyline. Like, if you want big picture notes, you could do that. The way that I think about it is you don't want to put work in front of people where they're going to point out things that you know are wrong, that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to fix that later. But with all workshops, it's always, you did it innately without even having to have someone tell you this, but it's always take what's useful and really just throw away everything else that is not.
Mm-hmm.
Opinions of people that this sounds horrible. Opinions from people whose writing you don't respect usually go in the trash can. Sometimes they'll say things that will stick with me, where in the moment I would be like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But then it'll come back to me in my mind and be like, damn it, maybe they were right about that one thing, you know?
When I do seek out other people to read my work, I am bucketing them into, I'm asking this person their opinion because they're a writer, and I'm asking this person their opinion because they're a reader. And sometimes the writers, I will just be like, nope, today you're just a reader. And they'll call out things from that perspective that I find more interesting. But yeah, I do think you have to be pretty protective about the things that you do like about your work. It is art. You're not trying to build like a up to code building, where it's like, no, this is the way you have to do it in order for it to stand. It is subjective. It's meant to be beautiful to you. And ideally the goal, obviously I would love to make millions off my writing, but the feeling I get from money has still not achieved the status of the feeling I get when I write something that I fucking love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I think I just haven't made enough money from writing, but maybe we can work on that part leveling up later.
I aspire to that level of jaded.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? Do you have any bad feedback stories, workshop stories?
I guess there was one moment when I did a pitch that someone called tone deaf. I had to sit with that for a week, and then I wrote back to her and I was like, you didn't have to take the time to say that it was tone deaf. You could have just deleted it. That's what a lot of editors would have done. And instead, you were cruel enough in your phrasing to make me think about my life for a while. And I think thinking about it made me a marginally better person. And so, that kind of feedback, obviously, you will remember, but that wasn't bad feedback. It was feedback that made me feel like a terrible person, but it was good feedback. So I can't say I didn't deserve it.
Oh man, I've had to give feedback like that before to someone where I was like, maybe you should consider what you're having this character do and how fucked up it is, actually. I think some people, when they're creating stories, they don't think about these things that people might have triggers for, especially if they haven't lived through them. So I've done that. I've given that feedback before.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to do it very gently. But I'm glad she did it in a way that resonated with you, where you could take it in and
Yeah, no, I needed to be stabbed in the gut to hear it, and she did that. She did it well. She stabbed, she twisted, she retracted, and then we've never spoken again.
and
So
she let you bleed out.
yeah, she let me bleed out on the floor, and I was like, cool, okay, well, I'm just gonna crawl into a cave and hope for the best.
I think in terms of red flags to look out for in a workshop, if someone is to go into one and it's their first time, I think that if you have a workshop leader that does not send out in advance or do an overview of what the rules of the workshop are, that's a huge problem. Because if you're coming into a workshop and there are a bunch of people who've never workshopped before, it's
Mm-hmm.
fair to say that they're not going to know what they should do, what their expectations are. It's just human nature. These aren't bad people. They just don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that experience in the last class that I took. And I messaged the professor and I was like, hey, I think we need some guardrails for what feedback is appropriate. And he responded immediately and sent it out and had everyone read it and write a response about it. And I was like, cool, that is really nice. And then when we went forward into the rest of the workshop, everyone knew what they were supposed to do and what was expected. The second red flag is if you don't have a workshop leader who will actually step in when things are going left in a feedback session, and they just kind of like let someone dominate the room or say things that are not helpful or inappropriate. If someone is not guiding the conversation in a helpful way, that's definitely a red flag. I had that experience with my own work and I just disassociated during that workshop session. I just shut down and went to my car afterwards and sobbed. So that was great. Now that I'm older and wiser and have more experience, I probably, with a very like hard pounding heart, shaking hands, and would have said something. But I think that's the thing to take away from workshop discussion is look for a workshop leader who is going to create a safe space and help you get what you want out of it, because usually you're paying for this, work.
Mm-hmm.
And it is something that you shouldn't take lightly. I've also, but I think the third, actually, one more red flag. One more red flag. Typically, you should try and attend a workshop from someone who understands your work or reads the type of things that you're writing. You want someone who has enough understanding of the themes that you're talking about even to help you, because if
Yeah.
they don't and they're just going left on things, it's super unhelpful. But anyway, that's my workshop.
It's almost the same as who your eventual readers are, too. It's like your reader is not everybody. That would be strange and unachievable for many reasons. You want to find people that are going to understand your themes so that they're not looking at the wrong stuff when they're editing. Outside of taking classes, I've not gone to a workshop. I go to retreats mainly. And sometimes I know that the writer there leading it will be incredible for my progress in the piece. And then sometimes I know that I'm going for inspiration and friendship. And I think, similar to a workshop, you got to know what you're going in for, and you got to have an idea of who's going to be there to guide it.
Yeah, I think actually, if you have time and money and you can get into a retreat or do some sort of workshop like Tin House, usually they have really talented writers who are coming to those events to teach, whether it's short story or poetry or nonfiction or fiction. That's an incredible opportunity. And you know that those people, because they are seasoned writers and people that want to help and encourage other writers, are going to be really helpful for you.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to you use the word vulnerability in a workshop. And you and I had previously talked about how every week I kind of pour my soul out into my Substack to thousands of people and just say whatever I want. And you had said you like could never be that vulnerable, but you are paying to be vulnerable in workshops. I'm just being vulnerable for free. Just
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an analogy about the cow in there somewhere, but what do you think it is about paying for it that protects it?
That's a great question. I think what you do every week is very different than when you're putting your work in front of people and you have to look at them as they tell you what they like and don't like. You, to be fair, you send out your newsletter into the void, and then some people do comment on your Substacks. I have done it, which is great, but you hits I'm imagining Kelton hits send, closes her laptop, and then she goes and plays in the mountains somewhere and she can kind of disconnect. And your newsletter is your stories about your life and the things that you're mulling over, and you don't need feedback from people on that. Like, they take it or they leave it, and that is it. Whereas in a workshop, I'm saying, tell me how to be better. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell me I'm brilliant and amazing and I'm going to win a Pulitzer.
I
That's
mean,
what I'm really looking for.
when you press send, or in my case, you press schedule, you do still get those comments. I do still get emails from people who are like, well, I think blah, 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 blah. And back in the day when I had a dating blog and I just sent it out into the world, I got death threats. When you're writing about your life, the feedback is on your life. It's not always about your writing. People are like, great writing, but you're a slut. So it's just like a different kind of feedback. But doing that, like, I will say I would workshop my life when people had feedback on what I wrote, because what I was writing about was myself and how I live. Back when it was a dating blog, I felt a personal responsibility to be courageous and to be forthright with people. And so I became a better person because people were critiquing my person. And now most of what I write about is slow living and the ethics of being in a small town and things like that. And when people do contribute in that way about my life, where it's actually plastic doesn't get recycled in this way. And have you ever thought about how road base affects the ecosystem around the road? And I'm learning about those sorts of things now. That's the feedback I get. But it is feedback on how I'm living, not on how I'm writing, which is really different and is the burden of the personal essay. As you would know from like a cat person and things like that, it's everybody was quick to critique the author on her life, but they were quick to critique because everybody had read it, because the writing was so good. So you're just opening yourself up to a different kind of workshopping when your writing is personal essay, I should say. All writing is personal, but
Fair enough. Well, I would love to talk a little bit about editing, because you say you don't do any. Every week when we chat, I'm shocked by how different we are and how we work.
I'll talk a little bit about the editing process for the newsletter. The premise of the newsletter, like I just covered, slow living, mountain town, small town, and I send it every Sunday and Wednesday. Wednesday goes to paid subscribers only. That is not a lot of time when you have 3 jobs and a baby and a life. I'm like, what else am I doing? Oh, a podcast. And I know that I will probably not get to write the piece for this week until Saturday, and it goes out on Sunday. So there just isn't a lot of time for editing. I will edit, though, if I am writing about town politics. That is the one area of my newsletter that I do reread and adjust, because people who live here read the newsletter. And I want to be careful not to misrepresent. I will drag somebody if I'm accurately, factually dragging them. I'm not afraid to do that. If it's like, because it's my opinion that is dragging them. I'm not going to be like, this person's a bitch, but I am going to be like, this person voted against letting animals live in our community. My husband is always like, do you think someone's going to know that this is about them? And I'm like, if they know that this is about them, I think that's okay. I'm just writing about what's happening. I try with politics to keep it, local politics, to keep it as a unbiased journalist. I don't think I'm always successful. I'm a quite opinionated person, but I'll edit those pieces. I want to be careful about how I represent people, and that is important to me, to be respectful and kind. And so I will edit with that in regard. But if I'm writing about my experience with a C-section or something, I'm not worried about editing it. It's my experience. And I'll go back for lyricism. I'll go back for making sure I used the word right. I often, when I'm speaking, use a word that kind of sounds like the word I mean, and then I'm not using the right one. Ben is constantly correcting me. He has a whole list of Keltonisms where I've just botched idioms and cliches from all of history. But that's what I look for. I don't do wholesale edits on pieces for the newsletter.
What about your fiction, though?
For fiction, I do edit. So within Scrivener, I leave myself notes a lot of times. Like one of the things I was writing this week was a flashback. I don't know what else to call it. It was when she was younger. And I specified which birthday of hers it was on. And I left myself a note that was like, check for consistency later in the ages. And then as I had been doing some of this prep work for the plot course, I realized that I had certain characters be intimate too soon. And so I went back and edited that scene just to get it out of there. But the approach with the fiction so far is, like I said earlier in the episode, I'm just word dumping. I'm trying to get it out of me. And in order to get it out of me, I need to get me out of the weeds. But I look forward to editing it because I know it obviously will need it. That's a new process for me. I've never edited a piece at this scale. I have done a lot of editing for all of the pieces that I wrote for outlets, for The Guardian, for Cosmo, like going back and forth with an editor in a really masochistic way. I'm sort of like, yeah, just rake me over the coals. My editor I work with at The Guardian, I really trust and cherish her opinion. And this past time working with her was one of the only times that there were a couple sentences where I was like, no, I think this sentence is important. But prior to that, I was like, whatever the editor says, I want to get paid for this piece. I want it published. I want it over, whatever you say. But I think that's smart in the beginning of your career. And then once you have a relationship with someone, it's easier to be like, hey, I really think that this part is important. I really like the way this flows. I would not write it this way. Because when you're getting published out there, it's like you don't have control over the headline. You're getting represented in their way no matter what. So try to protect the parts of your writing in the piece that you feel are super important. Okay.
Boyan, what are you doing?
Sorry.
Can you get out of here?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I'm happy to talk through what I do, if that is helpful for you. I've written 3 books. The current book that I'm working on, which is I would call like my big book that is about intergenerational trauma and
my favorite subject.
and family lore. When I think about what the editing process is going to be like for this book and how I'm working on it, I do somewhat similar to what you were saying, where I'm editing while I'm going. And the way that I think about it is it's almost like I'm shaping something. And first, maybe it's like a clay ball. And then I'm going to really refine it and get it to the shape that I want it to be and then get it shiny. And then I'm going to put it aside and I'm going to work on the next one, where I'm almost like building up this structure of something. So I'm on, I think, like chapter 6 now. And I try and get each chapter to a place where all the beats are there. And then I'll go back and line by line and sentence by sentence think through, do I like how that sounds? Is this what I'm trying to say? Is this resonating? I repeat myself a lot. Like I'll add like 3 adjectives or 3 verbs on something because I'm trying to find the right word. So I'll write the first draft and then I'll go back and I'll go through it and do a second draft. And then that's where I would ask for feedback. That's where I'm going to attend a workshop or actually pay for a full edit from, my teacher Mark or somebody else and have them read through it and give me some feedback. So I know what's working, what areas I need to develop more, if the beats are in the right place, if the conflict is in the right place. And then based on that bit of feedback, a third version, a third edit where I'm going to be, again, producing, moving things around. And then I'll do a final 4th draft. Yeah. Now, after the 4th draft, that's typically when I'm going to start sending it out. But it takes at least 4 big edits to get it to a place where I feel like it's ready. And then what's wild is they say that your book has to be pristine when you put it out in the world, because a lot of agents, they don't want something that's going to require a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get to this place where you're like, I feel so great about this book and I'm going to send it out, and you're going to get an agent and they're going to be like, okay, let's edit your book. And then you're going to send it out to publishers. Ideally, someone picks it up and then you have a real editor with a capital E who's going to edit your book again. So when they say writing is really rewriting, it's the truth. And it is so much of what I spend my time on. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together. The generative part is the thing that feeds your soul, right? And then the editing of it is, do I have the technical skills? Do I have the tools in my toolbox to take this thing that I poured my creative spirit into and actually make it into something that can be received by people and tell the story the way that I want it to be told?
What should we call my little book?
Not little. Nothing that diminishes the effort that you're putting into it.
I'm going to call it, well, I'll just give you my working title. We're going to call it The Keep.
The Keep. Okay.
The Keep. I've just been joined by a cat. You going to say hello? No? Jesus. Cats. But yeah, I am live editing The Keep. But I'm also still trying to figure out how Scrivener works while I do that. There are a lot of facets to using Scrivener that are new to me. My previous fiction works had all been done in Google Docs. And so when there was something to work on, I was always going off of the feel of what word did I want to change? And I would just Command F, Control F, whatever it is, find wherever that word was, and then narrow in on where I wanted to write. With Scrivener, I am trying to make use of this is a different scene. And it's not all just one huge chapter. You can break these things up. I was just thinking as we were speaking earlier that flashback I'm referring to should be its own scene, because I might want the character to flash back to that at a different point in the story and not where it is. So I'm still getting a hang of fiction structure in that way. That is really new and novel to me.
I think what's nice about Scrivener is you can create little files and dump stories or backstory or even notes to yourself in those files, and you can move them around, right?
Yeah.
To figure out where they make sense. I bought it for my mom and she will not use it. She uses Microsoft Word. I think we just get stuck in our routines of what works for us and what's comfortable. But I do think that for someone like you who likes to monitor their word count and look at things like KPIs, Scrivener is a great tool.
It totally is. I do love it for that.
Well, what are your goals for this week, Kelton?
Oh, I have a gift coming. My in-laws arrive in 2 days, and they will be here for a little over a week, and I am going to take advantage of that. They're great baby holders. They're also great at chores, but I don't need anybody to do my chores. I need someone to hold that baby so that I can get some work done. I have my first, let's see, what do I want my goal to be? Because I have my first plot class. And so coming out of that, I think there will be some work. I think, listen, I'm open to feedback. I am open to being workshopped. instead of a word count this week, I am going to take your advice. And I am going to say I'd like to dedicate 7 hours outside of the class. I'm not counting the class. The class is 2.5 hours. I want to dedicate 7 other hours to working on the novel. And in the back of my mind, that little word ticker will still be running up. But it's going to be 7 hours. And the way I'm going to do that is I will actually put it on the calendar because it is very helpful for me. And Ben and I love using a calendar. Love being like, these 2 hours are taken. I share all of my work meetings with him so that he knows when I can't take the child. And so I will put them on and get them scheduled. And that way also I'm like, that is counting those hours for me.
How much time would you say on average you spend? Is 7 a pathetic goal? Is it a reach goal?
Well, this past week, I would say I only spent like 3 hours. I had an assignment I had to turn in for a writing opportunity. I had a new client come in that I had to onboard. I just was like, it's not book week. And so book week got pushed to in-law week. Mm-hmm. I think 7 hours is a good goal for me, only because I'm trying to think about truly uninterrupted time where the child doesn't need me. He is exclusively breastfed. I don't pump. It didn't work for me. So he doesn't have a bottle routine. He drinks water out of a sippy cup, but he so far won't drink formula. I'm still a cow in my stable. I cannot leave. And I love to know that my time is going to be uninterrupted and I can get an hour and a half usually at most before you're being summoned to the stable.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. I remember those days.
Yeah. I mean, they say that babies, it's like at his age should be like feeding every 3 to 4 hours. And like, I got a snacker on my hands. He's his mother's child. He's like every hour and a half. He's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm hungry.
Oh man. Well, how old is Woods now?
He's 8 months.
8 months. Okay. So he'll start eating food and
he's eating some food, but like,
doesn't help. Maybe he just wants you.
I mean, we do love each other. So I can see why he might be like, where's mom? Yeah, and I'm like, hold on, baby, I'm writing a novel.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't go away. My 6-year-old I'll be writing and she'll come in the garage. Can I be with you? I want you. I'm like, no,
get out.
It takes a lot of bribery and ice cream. And like, if you can give mommy until this time, I will take you to get frozen yogurt or whatever it may be.
Oh. I mean, you get a treat too then.
Yeah. Who doesn't love frozen yogurt?
What is it right? All right. So my goal is 7 hours on top of the class. And I will schedule it and I will let you know next week how that goes. Tell me about your goal and which of your projects it is on.
So first, I would just like to say I'm so excited for your upcoming week of added childcare. And I do think that this time spent goal is going to be helpful for you. And I bet you write a ton. I bet you blow past your medium-sized word count goal. I will put money on it right now. You'll get do you have frozen yogurt in your town?
No, of course not. Oh. But I could probably make some homemade ice cream.
Oh yeah, put some protein powder in it. That's where my mind goes. Make some protein ice cream. Anyway, my writing goal for the week. the sad ways in which we adults give ourselves a treat. I'm going to try to get up and write from 5:30 to 6:30 every day. That's what I am hoping that I can do. I also have 2 things that I have to apply to this weekend where the deadlines are like the 1st and the 2nd.
Okay.
So I have to do that. I can see myself not doing it and I really want to do it, even though I think I'll get rejected from these workshops because one I've gotten rejected from before and whatever. And the other one I've gotten accepted for before, but it was a long time ago. So I'm going to apply for these workshops and hopefully I'll get in. And then I want to spend 1 hour every day from 5:30 to 6:30 writing, which means I have to get up at 5 and have coffee and get in front of my desk.
Do you want me to gentle parent you or disappointed dad you? Because I'm in a different time zone. I will be awake. I could harass you and just be
Are
like,
you awake?
"Are you writing? What are you doing over there?"
My phone's on Do Not Disturb from 11 to 9, so it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
Even more fun. I should text you and just be like, "I'm watching you."
I could text you every morning that I'm at my desk if you want.
Yeah,
Like,
hell yeah.
I'm here. Okay. Do I get a prize? Do I get a treat if I do that?
Absolutely. You can get frozen yogurt from a real frozen yogurt place. You're not out there scooping snow into a bucket like a homesteader.
You do not do that.
No, but we have talked about it. We do make our own popsicles, but we are not so far along in the child entertainment business that we're teaching him how to make homemade ice cream.
Well, I wish you luck in your goal this week.
And
And
you
I
as
guess you'll
well.
hear from me not on the weekends. I'm not waking up at 5:30 on the weekend. That's insane. But on Monday morning, bright and early,
Bright and early.
I'll be texting you.
I can't wait. All right. You know how the end of the episode goes. This is Pen Pals with Kelton Wright and Krisserin and Kelton, talking about our journeys to getting published and all the ways we get rejected in the meantime. You know how podcasts work. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and write to us at
officialpenpalspod@gmail.com.